Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are opening a file that I honestly thought I knew everything about.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but it turns out I was only looking at the dust jacket. We're scrubbing through the archives to look at a figure that everyone thinks they know.
The Mad Monk.
The Mad Monk of Russia, Grigori Rasputin. You know the caricature.
Hmm.
The hypnotic eyes, the unkempt beard, the guy who supposedly just refused to die.
It is one of history's most durable myths. I mean, usually when we pull apart the Rasputin story, we focus on his manipulation of the Empress or the debauchery or that almost cinematic assassination scene.
With the poison in the frozen river, exactly.
Right.
But today, we are pivoting. We aren't looking directly at Rasputin. We're looking at the man standing just behind his right shoulder. A man who has been almost totally erased from the popular story.
Aron Simanovitch.
His name was Aron Simanovitch. And the paradox here is, well, it's massive. Simanovitch wasn't just Rasputin's secretary and gatekeeper. He was a Jew.
Which, in the context of Tsarist Russia, is.
Mm.
It's basically a contradiction in terms. You have the holy man of the Orthodox court and a Jewish businessman working together.
That is exactly the tension we need to unpack. The whole premise for this deep dive is, how did a mystic monk, embedded in perhaps the most anti-Semitic royal court in modern history, end up becoming, arguably the most effective protector of the Jewish people in the entire Russian Empire?
It's a fascinating question, and I want to be very precise about our sources today.
Hmm.
We are drawing the core of our analysis from the extensive research of historian and Professor Reuven Feingold of the Hebraica of Jerusalem.
Right.
His work is what really shines a light on this specific, strange alliance.
So let's set the scene here, because if you don't understand the atmosphere of Russia under Tsar Nicholas II, you just can't appreciate what they actually pulled off. We're not just talking about a little bit of social prejudice.
No, we're talking about state-sponsored survival threats. Nicholas II isn't just some generic monarch. In Jewish history, he's often called the Tsar of pogroms. Anti-Semitism was systemic.
You had the Black Hundreds.
Right, these ultra-nationalist gangs roaming the streets, often with the police just looking the other way. You had rigid laws about where Jews could live, what they could study, how they could work. The hostility, it came from the very top.
And into this rigid, hostile world walks Rasputin. So let's do a quick profile on him, just to contrast with Simanovitch. He comes from Siberia, born in 1869 in a village called Pokrovskoye.
Which is effectively the middle of nowhere. He's a peasant.
A peasant. And he creates this persona of the starets, the holy man. But he's not polished at all. The descriptions from court are just...
Oh, they're visceral.
Visceral. Greasy hair, dirt under his fingernails, semi-illiterate. He's eating with his hands.
He was raw, but he had this undeniable charisma. He discovered pretty early on that he had these rumored gifts, hypnosis, healing, and he leveraged that spiritual intensity to charm the high society of St. Petersburg.
Which was just bored and decadent.
Exactly. Bored, decadent, and obsessed with mysticism.
So you have the Siberian mystic. Okay, now let's introduce the other half of the equation. Aron Simanovitch. Who was he?
A completely different universe. Simanovitch was born in 1873 in Kiev to a Jewish family. He started his career as a jeweler, and our arrives.
Okay.
There were whispers that he'd made his initial fortune during the Russo-Japanese War in 1904. By the time he crosses paths with Rasputin, he's a successful diamond dealer and a casino owner in St. Petersburg.
A casino owner and a monk.
I know.
It sounds like the setup to a bad joke. But they meet, and instead of clashing, they form this bond of trust that lasts for 10 years.
It was a kind of transactional friendship that I think turned into genuine loyalty. You have to remember, despite Rasputin's power, he was an outsider at court. The nobles hated him.
And Simanovitch, as a Jew, was also an outsider.
Right. They were two misfits navigating a world that ultimately wanted them both gone.
But for this alliance to have any teeth, Rasputin needed actual power. And the key to that power was the royal son, Tsarevich Alexis.
This is the pivot point for everything, for the entire 20th century in Russia, really. Alexis had hemophilia. His blood wouldn't clot. Any tiny bruise could be fatal.
The doctors were helpless. The parents, Nicholas and Alexandra, were desperate.
Completely desperate. And there's that famous moment, right? The boy is hemorrhaging, the doctors have basically given up, and they call in the monk.
So Rasputin arrives.
He arrives, he doesn't perform some medical procedure. He prays. He just prays for exactly 10 minutes. And then he says to the boy, and this is recorded, "Open your eyes, my son."
Kid.
The bleeding stops. The boy wakes up smiling. His health improves, rapidly.
That is the part that always gets me. Because whether
Mhm.
you believe it was supernatural or the placebo effect or some kind of hypnosis, the political reality is that it worked.
It worked, and it gave Rasputin the keys to the empire. The Empress Alexandra was absolutely convinced he was a saint sent by God to save the dynasty.
She gave him carte blanche.
Total carte blanche. By the middle of World War I, the rumor was that Rasputin was effectively running the country while the Tsar was at the front. He's appointing ministers, firing generals, signing state documents.
So now you have a Siberian peasant with imperial power. But Rasputin isn't an administrator. He's a hedonist.
Yeah.
He likes his wine, he likes women, he likes chaos.
He needs a manager.
He needs a manager, exactly. He's living this life of opulence that required just vast amounts of money. And he needed someone to organize the chaos. That is where Simanovitch steps in.
He becomes the secretary,
Hmm.
the gatekeeper. And he realizes he can turn Rasputin's incredible influence into a kind of protection mechanism.
Let's break down the mechanics of this business,
Yeah.
because it essentially sounds like a high-stakes protection racket, but for a humanitarian cause.
That's a good way to put it. Simanovitch set up a system. Wealthy Jews who needed help or who just wanted to help their community would donate large sums of money to Rasputin.
Through Simanovitch.
Through Simanovitch, yes. And in exchange, Simanovitch would draft requests or orders for Rasputin to sign, using his influence to just bypass those anti-Semitic laws we mentioned.
Let's get into the specifics from Professor Feingold's research because they show just how clever this was. The first one that really stands out is the university quotas.
Right, the numerus clausus. This was a strict quota system that prevented the vast majority of Jews from getting a higher education in Russia. If you were a bright Jewish kid and wanted to be a doctor, you usually had to leave the country.
Go to Germany or France.
Exactly.
So how does Rasputin get around a state law? He can't just, rewrite the legal code on a Tuesday.
No, but he can write a note. Simanovitch would draft these letters of recommendation for Jewish students. But the argument they used was just brilliant. The letters claimed that the Empress herself wanted these specific students to study in Russia.
And what was the logic there?
The logic was this. If we force these kids to go abroad to study, they'll get radicalized by foreign ideas and come back as revolutionaries. So, for the safety of the empire, we must let them into our universities.
That is masterclass manipulation. He's using the regime's own paranoia against them.
Precisely. And what university administrator is going to say no to a letter signed by Rasputin that invokes the Empress? It just overrode the law completely.
Okay, what about housing? There was the Pale Settlement. Jews weren't allowed to live in major cities like Moscow or St. Petersburg.
Correct. It was basically a geographic cage. So Rasputin and Simanovitch ran a side hustle, issuing special permits. They got authorization for Jewish tailors, merchants, artisans to open up shops right in the heart of these restricted cities.
Wow.
It effectively integrated them into the economy they were supposed to be banned from.
There was one story in the research that just highlights the absurdity of it all. The episode of the dentists.
It sounds like a comedy sketch, but it was terrifyingly real. A group of Jewish dentists had managed to get their degrees. And the state, in this fit of bureaucratic cruelty, decided that because they'd obtained these diplomas, which was seen as a privilege, they should be punished.
So the reward for becoming a doctor is punishment.
Welcome to Tsarist Russia. They were drafted en masse to the front lines of the army. Basically, you became a dentist, so now go die in the trenches.
That's insane.
The community reached out to Simanovitch. Rasputin spoke to the Tsar directly about it.
Yeah.
Order was reversed, instantly. All the dentists were exempted. It just shows that Rasputin could overturn the entire military bureaucracy with a single conversation.
But it wasn't just about bureaucracy. Sometimes it was about physical survival against, sadism. There's that story of the general in 1915.
This one's much darker. There was a Russian general who was notorious for torturing and humiliating Jewish soldiers under his command. It was sadistic, and it was happening with impunity.
And Rasputin just didn't like the guy.
He didn't like the officer personally, which helps Simanovitch's case, so Rasputin used his influence to get the general fired.
And the gratitude for that must have been immense. We're not talking about a small fee here.
No. Feingold's research notes that after that general was removed, Jewish families deposited 100,000 rubles into the bank accounts of Rasputin's daughters.
100,000 rubles in 1915. That is generational wealth.
It's a massive fortune. It shows the scale of the economy Simanovitch was running, and he did this internationally too. There was a Dr. Liefert, a Jewish doctor who was imprisoned in Germany during the war.
Okay.
Rasputin actually pressured the foreign minister, a guy named Sazonov, to negotiate a prisoner swap with the German chancellor just to get this one Jewish doctor back.
That is unbelievable leverage. He is altering foreign policy for Simanovitch's network. But, and this is where it gets really strange, we have to talk about the limitation. Because Rasputin wasn't some kind of egalitarian hero. There was a weird supernatural line he just would not cross.
Yes, and this is where we get into Rasputin's own psychology. He would take their money, he would fight their political battles, he would get them out of jail. But he refused, categorically, to use his healing powers on Jews.
What was the reason? Was it just anti-Semitism?
It was more like spiritual intimidation. He claimed that because the Jews are the chosen people, their God is too strong. He felt he couldn't compete with that. He used to say, I cannot heal you. Your God blocks me.
That is a fascinating psychological twist. It's not hatred. It's almost a warped kind of respect or fear.
Or fear, yes. There are case studies. A rich Jewish man in St. Petersburg asked Rasputin to heal his hemophiliac son, the exact same condition as the Tsarevich.
But he said no.
He refused, wouldn't even try.
And then there's the story of Baron Osterman.
Right. Osterman was a Jew who had converted to Christianity. He came to Rasputin for help with a nervous disorder. Rasputin tried to use hypnosis, but it just wasn't working. He got frustrated, started shouting, and eventually yelled, "Why did you lie about your roots? You are a Jew. Your God is too strong."
So he believed the hypnosis failed because the man's Jewish soul was immune to his magic.
Exactly. It creates a very complex picture. Rasputin wasn't an anti-Semite in the traditional violent Russian sense, but he held these deep, mystical beliefs about Jewish power.
Speaking of mystical, we should touch on his trip to the Holy Land. Rasputin actually went to Jerusalem in 1911.
He did. He traveled via Constantinople. He was doing the full pilgrimage, praying at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, getting baptized in the Jordan River, visiting Bethlehem.
But knowing Rasputin, he didn't just pray. I'm sure he caused a scene.
Oh, he was always working an angle. He wrote these furious letters back to the Tsarina complaining about the terrible conditions for Russian pilgrims, the ships, the housing, and because it was Rasputin complaining, the bureaucracy actually moved.
Things got better.
Travel conditions were improved. It just shows that even on a spiritual journey, he was always pulling those levers of influence.
Okay, we have to move to the end game. Because by 1916, this whole house of cards is shaking, the war is going badly, the people are starving, and everyone blames Rasputin.
The empire is destabilizing. The aristocracy, the grand dukes and princes, they're convinced that Rasputin is a German spy or simply a demon destroying Russia.
So Prince Felix Yusupov decides that for the monarchy to survive, the monk has to die.
He has to die. December 16th, 1916, this is the night, the trap is set. Yusupov invites Rasputin to his palace, claiming his beautiful wife, Princess Irene, wants to meet him.
Yep.
They bring him down to a cellar. They serve him cakes and wine laced with cyanide.
Enough to kill an elephant, supposedly.
Massive doses. And yet Rasputin eats the cakes, drinks the wine, and nothing happens. He just asks for more wine.
Which for a long time was seen as proof of his supernatural power.
Yeah.
But modern science has a different theory.
Right. The leading theory is biological. Rasputin was a heavy drinker, probably had chronic alcoholic gastritis. His stomach lining was so damaged or he had such low acidity that the cyanide didn't convert into gas effectively. Or his liver just filtered it.
So the poison fails. Yusupov is panicking. He grabs a revolver.
Shoots him in the chest. Rasputin falls. Yusupov thinks it's over. He goes upstairs to celebrate with his co-conspirators, but a little while later he goes back down to check the body.
And this is the horror movie moment.
He leans over the body, and Rasputin's eyes snap open. He grabs the prince by the throat, rips off his epaulette, and whispers, "Felix, Felix."
Oh my God.
Rasputin manages to scramble out into the snowy courtyard. It's unbelievable resilience. It took more shots from another conspirator, Persecuted, to finally bring him down. Then they beat him, castrated him, bound him in a carpet, and threw him into the freezing Neva River.
And when they found the body 3 days later,
they found water in his lungs, which means he was still breathing when he hit the water. He fought to the absolute bitter end.
But the most chilling part of this whole story isn't the death itself. It's the letter Rasputin wrote before he died. This is where Simanovitch's account is so vital.
It's a prophecy. Simanovitch documents that Rasputin sent a letter to Nicholas II predicting his own assassination, and he laid out 2 scenarios.
Scenario 1.
He wrote, "If my brothers, the peasants, kill me, then you, Tsar of Russia, have nothing to fear. You will reign for hundreds of years."
And scenario 2.
If the nobles, the boyards, kill me, then their hands will remain stained with my blood. And here's the curse. He said if nobles kill him, no member of the Tsar's family would survive more than 2 years.
They would all be slaughtered by the Russian people.
All of them. And look at who killed him. Prince Yusupov and Deputy Persecuted, nobles.
Exactly. And the timeline is terrifyingly accurate. Rasputin died in December 1916. The clock starts ticking. 19 months later, July 1918, the Bolsheviks execute Tsar Nicholas, Alexandra, and all 5 of their children in a basement.
Not more than 2 years.
And it was less than 2 years.
It really makes you pause. Simanovitch, the man who knew him best, he believed Rasputin truly saw it coming. He believed the monk knew his own life was the dam holding back the revolution.
So bringing this all back to our original question, how do we reconcile these two versions of Rasputin, the debauched mystic and the protector of the Jews?
I think it comes back to that idea of the misfit alliance. Simanovitch needed protection for his people. Rasputin needed money and management. But deep down, they were both outcasts.
Right.
The Siberian peasant and the Jewish jeweler were both looked down upon by that St. Petersburg elite.
That's a really strong point. They were united by the fact that the establishment hated them both.
And in a time of systemic hatred, that alliance of convenience saved lives. It got students into school, it kept families out of the army, it saved victims of torture. It doesn't make Rasputin a saint, not at all, but it makes him a much more complex figure than the caricature we usually get.
It's just a reminder that history isn't black and white. The villain of the story can sometimes be the hero for a marginalized group, even if his motives are messy.
Absolutely. And if you want to dive deeper into this, and I really recommend you do, the source material is fascinating. Obviously, we relied heavily on Reuven Feingold's analysis for this deep dive, but there is a broader reading list for those who want to investigate.
Let's give them the list.
First, you have Rasputin, The Conspirator Who Saved the Romanovs by Gary Null. That's a great starting point. Then, of course, the primary source itself, Rasputin par son secrétaire, that's Rasputin by his secretary, by Aron Simanovitch himself.
Is that available in English?
It is. It's available in French, English, and Hebrew, and it's where so many of these personal anecdotes come from.
Any others?
Yes, Rasputin, Une tragédie russe by Yves Ternon is excellent. And for a really stark look at the legal and social context of the time, The Jew as a Criminal by Keller and Anderson gives you the background on the laws Simanovitch was fighting against.
It really is a story that challenges everything you think you know about that era. Just when you think you have history figured out, you find a Jewish jeweler standing next to the mad monk, secretly changing the fate of thousands.
It proves that history is often shaped by the most unlikely alliances in the most unlikely rooms.
Thanks for listening to this deep dive. We'll catch you on the next one.